So we're going to talk about every team and their quarterback situation for next year. So we've seen a lot of teams with backup quarterbacks coming in and doing really well. And we're going to talk about the no-brainers, the questionables, and the ones that are definitely going to have new quarterbacks next year. So I'll start out with the no-brainers slide. The Rams here we have on this list. They had Jared Goff. They obviously made him like the highest paid quarterback, even though he's not having a great season. I don't think there's any way that they don't start Goff next year, so he's a no-brainer. Jimmy G, another big contract player who's playing better than Goff is, so he's going to be on their team next year starting. Aaron Rodgers, need I say more? Lamar Jackson for the Ravens. He's an MVP candidate right now on a rookie deal. Of course, he's going to be there. Russell Wilson, same boat as Aaron Rodgers. Josh Allen, I mean, he's not been lighting the world on fire, but he's doing enough to win, and they really don't have a proven backup or anyone to compete with him. So I think that's pretty safe. He's also the future, there's a high draft pick on him. Same with Sam Darnold here in this case. He's supposed to be the future, hasn't been playing great, but they just don't have any. They're not going to take another quarterback, in my opinion, this year.
Famous words from the Jets right before the trade deadline. We will trade anyone on our team except for Sam Darnold, and it was like one of their other like really good players. I can't remember.
Quinnen Williams.
It was Sam. We will trade anyone except Sam Darnold and Quinnen Williams. So they are committed to Sam Darnold.
Baker Mayfield, he falls in that same draft class from 2 years ago. He had a great rookie season, regressing this year, but I mean, there's nobody else for Cleveland right now to take that spot. Matt Ryan, he's been a longtime veteran of the Falcons. It'd just be weird for the Falcons to move on from him. He's having an okay season, so they're going to keep with him.
He's having a good season. The Falcons are not having a good season. If you look at his stats, I mean, he's still got a QBR of over 100. I mean, it's just the rest of the team is letting him down, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I still think I'm putting some blame on him for their problems.
I'm certainly not alleviating the blame on him, but
that's what I'm saying. Hey, he was a past MVP. Like when you were an MVP, you're held to a higher standard. So that's why I'm saying he's having an okay season. And then we've got the Texans, obviously Deshaun Watson, no brainer there. And then Stafford falls in that kind of Matt Ryan category, I think. Longtime veteran. And there's just, I mean, with Driscoll as their quarterback, he hasn't, done anything to say it's Driscoll's team now. Stafford, I think, is still going to be their guy for sure.
Yeah, well, lost to the Redskins today.
Yeah. When Roethlisberger comes back from injury, he's still going to I'll just let Connor talk about the Steelers.
I mean, I've said this many times. If this season has proven anything, it's how much we need Roethlisberger. I mean, Mason Rudolph got benched today in favor of Devlin Hodges because, I mean, man, I wish we would have kept Josh Dobbs. But nope, they were so committed to Mason Rudolph. So it's likely the Steelers are going to be looking for, unless Devlin Hodges lights the world on fire, they're probably going to be looking for another quarterback in some of the upcoming drafts. But for the time being, Roethlisberger, I mean, he just signed an extension too. So Roethlisberger will be the guy coming back.
That trade is a lose-lose-lose, in my opinion, because the Steelers don't get Dobbs when they could have used him. He's now the Jags' third quarterback. And now for Dobbs, he's not going to get to play. So it's like all around it's a losing situation with that trade. Unfortunate. I'm a fan of Dobbs, so I would have liked to see him playing. I
liked him too.
But yeah, we're all fans of Dobbs here. And then the Colts. Yeah, the Colts are an interesting one because starting the season off, you really didn't know what was going to happen with Brissett, as I like to call him Brisket. But he's actually played okay. I mean, Frank Reich shown a lot of trust in him. I don't think the Colts are going to move on from him. So I fully expect him to be their guy. He's been playing well. Kyler, he's having a great season as a rookie. So I don't think Arizona is going to take a quarterback for the third straight season in the first round. So Kyler's their guy. He's the future, and he's actually led them to a couple of wins this year. Mahomes and the Chiefs, MVP last year, obviously, cover Madden. He's still going to be the guy in KC. And then Carson Wentz, he really should be, I think, kind of, on the bubble, but there's no Nick Foles in Philly, and they gave him all that money. There's no way they're moving on from him next year. That wraps up the no-brainers. In my opinion, this list is smaller than it has been in years past. That's my general takeaway, is normally this list has a couple more teams. With the era of the backup quarterbacks this season, this list is shrinking a little bit. So we'll move on now to
and one last comment about, you talk about the list shrinking. One thing else about this list is that there's a couple teams that you would expect to be on this list that are not on it this year. There's a couple teams that have, for the past, for a long time have been on this list, but are now starting to move into some other categories. So, which you'll see a big one on the next slide.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly too, like if I'm either I know some of these teams that we had like on that previous slide there are definitely, I'm sure that they will be no-brainers. But if I was like the Jets for sure, and then maybe even the Lions or Falcons as well, looking at this list, or I mean, the Rams really can't because of Goff's contract, but those are teams too. I mean, really, they don't have like the greatest situations. Like, yeah, they're probably no-brainer that they're going to keep their quarterback, but I highly doubt that really like any of them are truly
they're not
with those four.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, I think Ryan is safe. I don't think Stafford. I agree about Stafford, but I think Ryan is safe.
Yeah, I guess that one not as much, but I mean, if you're the Rams going forward, I mean, I don't see how they could be like happy with Jared Goff right now. Like, Matthew Stafford's had plenty of time. Like, and I just personally don't know. I just don't see what the Jets see in Sam Darnold. I have not been impressed. I wasn't impressed with him in college, honestly. Like, I was hoping like the Titans or somebody would draft him.
Yeah.
Please let it, or the Colt, like let an AFC South rival get him, like please. But it didn't happen. But I wasn't a fan of him at USC when I watched a couple of his bigger games. And then he hasn't really done that much as a pro either. I just don't. I have not been impressed with him personally. Like, I mean, after the Jets comments they made at the trade deadline and stuff, like, I'm sure he will be their quarterback next year. But if I'm the Jets, I'd be looking to move on instead. But they're probably going to be stubborn and not do that. So, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, not complaining.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain. I'm just saying if I was their GM, that's what I would be doing. But I'm not their GM, so I guess they can keep him.
All right, so we're going to move on to the questionable teams. I see you got the old Panthers logo on there. That's pretty. Haven't seen that in a while. But yeah, so we're with the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to start with Kirk Cousins. I mean, we made fun of him earlier this season on the podcast when we showed that clip of him at his gender reveal, and he almost missed the target when he was throwing the egg or whatever. So I'll be interested to see what the Vikings do with him, because he does still have that contract. But I mean, do you think would they try and get someone in free agency, or maybe like draft somebody?
Out of all the teams on this list here, I think Kirk Cousins, especially the way he's been playing recently, I think he's safer to be the quarterback next year. They don't have a backup that's going to compete with him right now. So, and with the contract and stuff, I would still say he's safer to start. It would kind of surprise me if he wasn't, but I don't know about Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kirk Cousins is safe. I mean, he's had some bad moments this year, but lately he's been playing better. So just barring like a late season collapse, while it is slightly questionable, I'd say he's more safe than anything.
Yeah. So then we have the Saints. So the big question with the Saints is really Drew Brees' age, because as long as Drew Brees is around, I think he's going to be the starter. It would be hard to argue him being, unless he were to just completely regress. I mean, he had a big game against the Panthers today. So, but at least for the Saints, they have that security now where if Drew Brees, with how old he is, if he were to retire or if they wanted to trade him or maybe something like that. They have Teddy Bridgewater as their backup who played really well. I mean, he didn't lose a game when he was playing. So I think that's the big question mark for the Saints is the dynamic between Drew Brees retiring or if they want to use him as collateral since they have that backup quarterback that they know is good and can be the starter. Oh, did you want to say something?
I'll let Eric start this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with Connor. Although my only thing is about Bridgewater is he like on contract for like beyond this season though? I'm not sure because if he's not and then he ends up walking, then that definitely makes it a trickier situation. But the main takeaway is though is as long as Drew Brees decides he doesn't want to retire, he will still be the quarterback. Like they would definitely never trade him after everything he's done for them, to try to leverage draft picks or anything. Like they're gonna let him play there until he wants to retire. So because even most teams when Teddy Bridgewater came in and filled in when Brees was injured and
Teddy Bridgewater's on a 1-year contract, yes.
Okay, yeah. So he might opt to go try to start somewhere else next year, but so they may not have that insurance. But as long as Drew Brees, normally though, what I was going to say was before I got distracted there was, like I said, if Drew Brees wants to come back, obviously they're going to let him. So I don't see that situation changing. But when Bridgewater came in and didn't lose a single game, most teams there would be like, oh, should the backup stay in, But with the Saints, they were like, no, Drew Brees is the guy. So unless he retires, he will still be the quarterback. But I would, again, kind of like Kirk Cousins, I would just put this one as slightly questionable.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one, Eric. I think that they're going to want to sign Bridgewater back, after what he's shown.
They will, but
that's priority one, I think.
Well, yeah, I'm not. But I mean, they're not going to be doing that for him to be the starter, though. And honestly, if I'm Teddy Bridgewater, I would be looking to try to go somewhere where I could start instead of, continuing to be a backup. Now, if he doesn't get a starting offer, then he probably comes back as the backup. But
okay, here I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I think Brees is going to retire. I think that the Saints are going to sign Bridgewater to a big deal, and I think Bridgewater is going to want to come back because they've had success together, Bridgewater and the Saints. He's had a lot of success with them. So I think that's a good pairing. And then honestly, I don't think they're going to bring back Drew Brees because he's been playing good, but he's not been – I mean, he's going to fall off that cliff pretty soon. I think they're going to, obviously play this season out, but and if they obviously win the Super Bowl, I think obviously he's going to retire, try and go out like Peyton with a Super Bowl win. But I think Brees retires though. I don't see Brees playing on another team, and he's a family man too. Whenever I watch a Saints game, they're always showing clips of his wife and his sons and stuff, and him coaching his sons' football teams. I think Brees is going to retire. Personally, that's my thought. So I do think they're going to move on.
All right, interesting thoughts on the Saints. I think it's kind of cool that we have this actually worked out to where you have the Vikings, Saints, and now the New England Patriots kind of early because they're the most slightly questionable on this list. So, but the New England Patriots, I'm sure this is going to shock a lot of people. Everybody's going to be like, what? The New England Patriots? How could you put them on this list? Tom Brady's the GOAT and blah, 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 blah. Well, to be honest, Tom Brady has not had the season that, everybody expects him to have. He's not playing GOAT level football anymore. I mean, the Patriots clearly this year have been carried by their defense. I mean, the defense is by far the number one team in the league. And, he's had some good games, but those have come against the Dolphins and the Giants and the Jets, all teams that are horrible. Because if you look at the Patriots' schedule and how many points the offense has put up in games against good teams, they put up 20 points against the Ravens. They only put up 17 against the Eagles, and they only put up 13 tonight against Dallas and 16 against Buffalo. All 20 or less points for an offense that is used to putting up 30 plus points a game. So do I think Brady is going to be the quarterback next year? Yes. But now that they've let Jimmy Garoppolo go, the Patriots are going to have to start going back into looking for Tom Brady's successor because, Tom Brady keeps saying he wants to play until he's like 40, until he's like 50. But realistically, kind of like Drew Brees, it's not going to be too long after this season until Brady falls off that cliff because he's already starting to show signs of it. I mean, last year was his highest interception total he's ever thrown since like 2004. So he is definitely starting to show his age and show that he's getting ready to fall off that cliff.
The rumors right now are that, like, obviously he wants to keep playing, but he wants to leave. Like, that's what all the people are saying. Schefter has said that and stuff. So it's interesting. It would just be so weird seeing him to play for a different team. And just to quickly say the teams that he's rumored to be going to, the Chargers are the most likely team, I think, that he would be rumored to go to. It would be interesting. It would really be interesting to see him go to a different team because what they're saying is he wants to win a Super Bowl without Belichick. So
prove that it's not just Belichick for the reason for his success.
So I don't know. But the thing is like him and Kraft have such like a good relationship. Belichick wanted Brady gone a couple of years ago, but Kraft was the one who, like, if it wasn't for Kraft, they would not have traded Garoppolo, and Brady would have been gone the next season. So it's interesting to see what Kraft is if he's gonna like make Brady stay, but this is definitely a questionable situation for sure.
That's interesting because I had not heard about those rumors. I guess I don't know how I hadn't, but
yeah, I've heard that. I've heard them too. So they're not just Zach coming up with stuff.
I wouldn't accuse Zach of just like
coming
on here and making it
but
up.
I'm just saying, but I've seen him too. It's not just like some website Zach was scrolling through and said that.
Yeah, that's that is a truly interesting scenario there for sure. Like, I would have just thought it would have been more of a questionable situation because, like, maybe if they win another Super Bowl, then he opts to, retire like how Peyton did when he won his last Super Bowl. Instead of, I know he said he wants to play till 45 or whatever, but as Connor said, he's definitely regressed some this year, and so maybe if they win the Super Bowl, then he just opts to retire. That's kind of more so what I would have thought, but that is an interesting development there. It's going to be neat to see how that plays out because that would be really weird watching him play for like the Chargers or somebody else. That's interesting.
Yep. All right, so moving on to the Chargers, we've touched on this. We actually touched on this in the last topics episode of the podcast with Phillip Rivers and how he's heavily regressed this year. And so I know Eric and I debated this with differing opinions where I don't see them moving on from Phillip Rivers just yet, but there's certainly the possibility that they do, whether it be Tyrod Taylor who comes in and takes over the spot, or if they, if they get like a draft pick, or maybe if Phillip Rivers retires, who knows? I mean, the way he's looked this year, anything could happen with Phillip Rivers.
I'll start with this one.
Go ahead, man.
I'll make it quick though. I think what's going to happen is I think Rivers will stay as their starter next year, but they are going to draft the heir apparent, and I think it'll be his last year. And he might be replaced depending on bad play. He could be replaced in season next year, but I do think he'll start next season.
Yeah, I mean, as we had kind of discussed about when Connor and I debated it, I mean, I am in agreement with Zach here is that I do think he probably will be the starter. I just don't necessarily think that's what they should do. Mm-hmm. I think they need to go ahead and move on. So if it was me, I would have this as a heavily questionable, but I do think he probably will still be the starter. So I guess really it's more of a slightly questionable, but he's just been bad this year, man. He has not been good.
All right, so moving on to the Broncos. This probably has the most quarterbacks involved in it out of any of the scenarios on here. So we have Brandon Allen is the starter right now, but they drafted Drew Lock in the draft because apparently he's John Elway's next project or whatever, because, that worked out so well in the past. But we have Drew Lock and we have Joe Flacco on the team who, he signed a 3-year deal with the Broncos in that contract. So he's definitely still going to be under contract. So the question is he going to start? I think, in my opinion, because Brandon Allen's certainly not inspiring any confidence in them right now. I mean, they did manage to beat. Who was it that they beat? The one that made Eric really mad. They beat the Browns, right?
Freaking Cleveland.
Yeah, right. So they beat Cleveland, which completely screwed Eric over.
Don't think I'm not so triggered about that Browns organization. It cost me $25,000, even though I lost the next week. It's still your fault.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's certainly not inspiring much confidence. I mean, he had an okay game against the Vikings, but he played completely terrible today against the Bills. I mean, 82 yards and an interception. I know the Bills have a good defense, but that's unacceptable quarterback play. So, my guess would be that Flacco probably starts the year, but I would not be shocked at all if the Broncos get off to another bad start, if they at least try Drew Lock out, because they didn't get the chance to this year because he got injured also. So, and since he's supposed to be John Elway's next big thing, I would not be shocked at all if a few weeks into the season, if the Broncos are like 0-4, 1-5, that Drew Lock becomes the starter.
I think actually Drew Lock will be the starter next year, just because from what we saw from Flacco, I mean, how can you not be better than that? And Lock, I think, is going to start the final couple weeks for him. So I think that's the plan. Lock's the future. Flacco was absolutely awful this year, so I think Lock's going to start.
Oh, but Joe Flacco was supposed to be elite.
Unless when Drew Lock comes in the last couple of games of the season, unless he just completely stinks it up, then
I don't even think unless he's healthy. That's the only thing keeping him not from starting his health, I think. It doesn't even matter how bad he plays. Honestly.
So? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was going to say my argument would be is if he just completely stinks it up, then they think, well, maybe we should give him a little more time. But this is probably the most uninspiring quarterback situation, though, right now out of a lot of these teams. Like, this is a bad situation right now for the Broncos.
There's so many of them. They're not good. We don't know what will be, but I don't think Lock's going to be great. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, the only good decision Elway ever made was bringing Peyton Manning to the team, and that was it.
That's hard.
yeah, right. Big, hard decision there.
Yeah.
So then moving on to Chicago, this is another interesting one where they don't have any clear, person to take over the role. I mean, unless they want to keep relying on Chase Daniel, which I'm not sure they want to. Yeah, which I don't think they're going to do. So, but I do think the Chicago Bears are ready to move on from Mitch Trubisky because, I mean, you've got this fantastic defense on your team and an offense that just can't do anything whatsoever. So this is going to be a team that is going to have even though they're on our questionable because it might not happen because the Bears are still respectable at 5-6 right now. I think the Bears are definitely ready to move on from Mitch Trubisky. Not sure who would take the spot, but I mean, whether they draft somebody or if they try and trade for somebody or pick up someone in free agency, but I don't think Mitch Trubisky is going to be the starter next year.
Yeah, they need to make sure they don't make the same mistake that like the Jaguars made with Blake Bortles. It's like, it's obvious like this guy is like he's not good. He makes terrible reads. He's similar to Blake. I mean, he's so similar to Blake Bortles watching him play because he'll make the like behind the shoulder, fade throw or like off shoulder throws, or he'll hit the like 40-yard bomb or something like that. But his problem is he just can't read defenses at all. And like Blake Bortles was the same way. Like Blake Bortles could chuck it like 60 yards down the field, but you trust him to make a read, like he can't do it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just, they need to move on from him and not make that same mistake that the Jaguars made when they extended Bortles. Like, and I think there's, like as Connor said, I think they're showing the signs of being ready to move on from him, and they absolutely should. They needed to submit, that even though they spent the number 2 overall pick on him, that it was a mistake and move on. They need to sell.
Yeah, I would like to see fresh scenery for Cam Newton in Chicago. That's what I would like to see. I think they've talked about Chicago as a rumored destination for Cam. So that's, I think, something to keep an eye on, because they were saying that about Foles in Jacksonville really early into the offseason, and it ended up being true. So we'll see if that, Newton becomes like the big quarterback free agent or trade piece or something. I think the Bears are the team that's going to make the move for him.
All right, so then moving on to the Giants. So in my mind, there is no question that Eli Manning is going to retire after this season. I don't see any reason for him coming back. I mean, every time that the Giants have put in a different quarterback and they've sucked and they went back to Manning still proved that he sucked too. So Eli Manning should be retiring after this season. So, which means that Daniel Jones is in all likelihood still going to be the starter next year, despite the Giants' struggles. I mean, they drafted him with the 6th pick, so he's supposed to be the future. But it will be interesting to see if the Giants are maybe in the mix for someone like Cam Newton or Andy Dalton, possibly, like wanting a veteran quarterback to at least be there to mentor, or if they go after Cam Newton, then, have Daniel Jones sit behind him for a little bit longer and develop more. I'm not sure what direction they're going to go, because I don't think they're going to draft anybody again. They're probably going to look for other positions, but who they go after in free agency will be interesting to look at as to what Daniel Jones's role will be next year.
Yeah, you said Dalton. They could. I mean, there could be a couple other backups like Jameis Winston. Some other type of people. I think Jones will be the starter next year. I think it's hard once you've already become a starter like Jones has to go back to the bench. I think that's just kind of weird, a weird dynamic to have. So I think that I don't think they're going to go all in for Cam. That was my crazy offseason prediction when I was talking about that stuff, where Cam was going to play. But yeah, I think they will get some veteran backup, but Jones will be the unquestioned starter. But I don't think Jones is that good. So
yeah, I'm just gonna echo what Zach said. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be Daniel Jones, but this is just another quarterback situation though where I don't like it. I didn't like when they drafted him. I thought that decision made no sense. Like, honestly, when they drafted him,
Giants fans agree with you.
When they drafted him, I was like, who? Like, I mean, I honestly didn't even know who he was. Like, I'm not like Zach and Connor. I don't watch it, a ton of college football. So I honestly didn't even know who he was. And
I never watched college. I knew about him from the draft, but I never saw a game in college.
Yeah, I mean, I hardly ever watched football.
Even though I don't know who a lot of these college players are, like, going into the draft, usually I at least do some research, like, when it's getting close to, especially like when it comes to like players that are going to be like near where the Jaguars are picking, and the Jaguars picked right after the Giants. So when I still had not heard of him, I was like, who is this guy? Like, it's funny. NFL memes released a thing like Daniel Jones looked like somebody you would cast to play Eli Manning in a movie, like about his career or something. I don't know, man. He did have some good performances like early on when he first took over, but I don't know, man. Like, I'm sure I would only list this as slightly. I mean, I guess it's more guaranteed since Eli Manning was the starter going into the season, but since Daniel Jones has been the starter the majority of the time, I would only consider him not being the starter slightly questionable. But he's another one like Sam Darnold, though, where I'm like, man, I just haven't seen anything that's like impressed me, you know what I mean? But he is only in his first year, so the Giants are going to be kind of stuck at this point.
Well, and I read just one last thing on the Giants is that I've seen some articles saying that actually the way that Daniel Jones plays, like his style of play, is actually really bad for Saquon Barkley. And they're saying like they think that's the reason why Saquon hasn't been having a good year this year, is that I guess Eli Manning's style of play was more like really well suited for Saquon, and Daniel Jones is just like the opposite. So it's not working out well for him. But then the Cowboys, so this is an interesting dynamic in the sense that obviously the organization, the fans, everybody wants Dak Prescott back as the quarterback. But the question is going to be, do the Cowboys have the money to give Dak Prescott what he wants? Because he's going to be, I mean, he's having another decent season, and Dak Prescott's going to be coming after them again, saying like, hey, I want that $35 million contract or whatever. But it's like they just don't have the money for that because they have to pay. They already paid Ezekiel Elliott that contract, but then they also need to try and pay Amari Cooper if they want that. So are they going to try and negotiate down a little bit further? In the end, I think they'll obviously side with Dak over Amari Cooper because you want a quarterback. Quarterbacks are far more important than one-star wide receiver. So, but it's going to be interesting to watch the contract talks and how they develop and where the Cowboys go if Dak Prescott doesn't get his deal. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not sure, but it's very interesting.
Dak's going to get now at this point whatever he wants. I mean, because you got to think too, if they don't re-sign Dak, Jerry Jones is not going to want to have to live through another rebuild or whatever. As old as he is, he wants to win now. I don't think the Cowboys are doing anything this year, but if he wants to come back at it next year with another shot to get a Super Bowl, they need to do it now, and it's going to have to be Dak. So they're going to have to pay Dak whatever Dak wants, I think. And I do think it will end up happening. They will get an agreement, but it's going to be an insane amount of money because Dak is having a great year. So.
Yeah, I mean, my guess to explain the thing that Connor was mentioning, how are they going to afford it? I mean, my guess is what's going to happen. They've got some other high salaried people, and my guess is they're going to move on from some of them. What Sean Lee is going to be my biggest bet that will probably be gone. Maybe I'm trying to think of who else they have. They're not.
Some of those linemen are going to have to go. Or at least one of them.
I mean, at least probably one. I don't know which one they would. I don't know if they would necessarily have
Crawford,
to just
maybe.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, a D lineman or something. I mean, they're gonna have to get rid of a couple of the higher paid veteran players, and then that'll free up the room for them to be able to pay Dak. They're not gonna let him go. I mean, but see, this is kind of back to points that were talked about when we talked about the problem with the, NFL QBs being overpaid. The longer you wait, the more you have to pay them. I believe it was Zach that mentioned that. And they're going to have to fork out way too much money.
If they play well. I'll say that as a caveat. If they just absolutely stink it up, then you win. But if they play well or as what they were playing, yeah, you got to pay more.
Yeah, and Dak is, he's had a couple of bad games. I mean, today wasn't very good, but I can't fully fault him for that because the weather conditions were really horrid in that game. But at the same time, he's had way more good games than bad games. And so that's only hurting the Cowboys with their leverage. For him, it's helping Dak, but it's hurting the, Cowboys management. But they're going to ultimately do whatever they have to do to get him to stick around. They're not going to let him go. I would be completely shocked.
Mm-hmm. So now we're going to move on to the last two teams in the question. Well, these are the two teams that are the most likely to have new quarterbacks next year, in our opinion. I would assume all of us would agree. First with the Titans, Marcus Mariota was the guy at the start of the year. He was playing kind of, semi-good. Questionably, the Titans were kind of off and on. But ever since Ryan Tannehill has come in and taken over the quarterback spot, he's played really well. I didn't see this coming I thought, the Titans were going to have an issue. Not only in the fact that both Mariota and Tannehill are men of glass, but the fact that, both of them were also just kind of average, mediocre quarterbacks. But, I mean, yeah, other than a semi-poor showing against Carolina, Ryan Tannehill has really come in and turned this team around this season. So I don't see any reason why Ryan Tannehill's not the starter next year. I mean, maybe once again, like if something before the end of the season, if Tannehill gets hurt again because, he's been injured a million times, if Mariota comes back in and plays better, that's why I think this is only still slightly in the questionable category, but I'm not sure what you guys think about this.
I'll go real quickly. Tannehill's been playing well, but don't let that fool you. He's not a great quarterback. Titans will finish 8-8, and they're going to want to draft somebody.
that 8-8 Titans.
Yeah. So, well,
Yeah.
actually, usually they're 9-7. They might get 9-7 again for the fourth straight year, but we'll see. So that's going to be what's going to happen, and they're going to draft a quarterback, but they'll probably not start him initially. They'll probably keep Tannehill on their team. I think Mariota will be gone. Tannehill will be the placeholder, but he's not going to be the future. They'll draft someone.
Yeah, I mean, going into the season, my guess would have been that both of them would have been gone, but Tannehill has played fairly well. I think people might be blowing it up a little bit. He's had a lot of great rushing performances from the running backs and stuff, and good performances from the defense that have kind of carried some of those wins. But at the same time, the Titans have had good results since he came in as the starter. But it's definitely going to be a change from the start of the season because Mariota is going to be gone. I mean, he's had chance after chance and just completely underperformed. So the Titans will definitely have a change, whether it's keeping Ryan Tannehill as a starter or drafting somebody. They're going to have a different scenario for sure.
All right, so then the last team on the questionable will be the Carolina Panthers. Another topic that we talked about. Kyle Allen certainly helped his case by having a strong showing against the Saints. I mean, honestly, what hurt the Panthers the most in that game this week was the kicker, Joey Sly, missing 3 kicks. And, when you lose a game by 3, when you miss 3 kicks, that's not a good look. But the signs are looking less and less that Cam's going to stick around, even though in my opinion, I think they should keep Cam around because I'm not sure Kyle Allen is the answer, but especially after the way he's performed in some of his previous games, like against San Francisco and then the game last week against Atlanta. So, but the signs are pointing to Cam Newton leaving. Obviously, he's got a big contract that they would like to, not have to repay him. So we'll see how it goes for Carolina. And also, again, it's going to depend on if Kyle Allen, if he has another string of poor performances, is it going to make the Panthers reevaluate their thinking?
Yeah, if I had to put a number one, most likely, I'd say Kyle Allen, most likely, day one starter next year. I mean, Cam, his health is just so unpredictable, and Allen, when you look at Allen's body of work, it's starter level, I'd say. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad, but he's still young so he's got room to progress. I would say that's Kyle Allen's are most likely. We still don't know what Will Grier is going to be like, but yeah, Allen is most likely.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Connor that I do think that they may need to reevaluate and possibly keep Cam, but at the same time, the signs are definitely pointing to him being gone. But it's a tricky situation because, in my opinion, Kyle Allen just isn't that great. But then you also have the Cam Newton health issues, and then you don't even know what you have in Will Grier. So this is a really tricky situation for the Panthers. Like, it's a situation I'm glad I'm not in. So,
all right, Eric, I'll let you take this slide away.
Yeah. So finally, we have 6 teams left, and these are the teams that we feel like absolutely for sure are going to have new quarterback situations. We'll talk about Zach and mine's Jaguars. Obviously, we talked about them a lot earlier when I was ranting about them and stuff, but I would be surprised if Nick Foles is the starting quarterback next year. I mean, I feel like most likely Gardner Minshew is going to take over. You've got a young guy who played pretty well while he was the starter, other than that Texans game, and he's on a 6th-round rookie contract. that's super cheap. You can try to build around that. So, do you guys have any other takes on the Jags?
Yeah, and I will say, watching these last two games, from what I thought Foles was gonna be a lot better than what he's been, and I don't know if it's still the injury or not, but he's really been underthrowing some balls that either end up as interceptions or almost interceptions, and that's ironically what Minshew, his biggest knock was his arm strength, but he actually showed a decent arm in the games he played in. So yeah, Minshew, I think, played well enough in the time he did play to be able to get at least. I think he's going to win this. I think it's going to be an open competition at the start of next season between him and Foles, but I think he's going to beat Foles. I do think Foles will stay on the team as a backup, but I just from the way that they've been playing right now, I don't see how Minshew doesn't beat Foles out. But Foles will still be starting this year, I think. I don't think Minshew comes back. I think they're just going to ride Foles out and see what they got with him. And from the early results, it's not been good. So,
yeah, I'm in agreement with Zach that I think Foles will still be on the team next year, but I think that Minshew's going to beat him out for the job. I mean, most of their success this season came with Gardner Minshew. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue against results. So, Minshew Mania is going to be running wild in Jacksonville again next season.
Yep.
2020 Minshew Mania coming back.
It's such like and it's so frustrating to like get a jersey for this team because like Minshew or Foles, like, you never know. And then like with Ngakoue, I want a Ngakoue jersey, but it's too risky to get it unless they re-sign him. Like, all the people thought the Ramsey jerseys got screwed over. Like, it's just so risky to buy Jags jersey.
I was like Jalen Ramsey's like the safest jersey you can possibly get. Oh, he's gone.
Oh, nope.
Well, that's okay. I have one jersey that I need to get a new one of these that is a 100% guarantee. I need a new Roethlisberger jersey, so he's not going anywhere.
At least for the year. So
yeah,
we'll see, man. So next is going to be the Washington Redskins. I mean, you want to talk about a terrible quarterback situation that they've had with Case Keenum, and then like Haskins played a game, and then Colt McCoy came in, and then they went back to Haskins, and
it's still of Alex Smith.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know if he's going to be able to play again. I mean,
well, yeah, but he's still under contract.
He's still on the roster technically, but yeah,
he's on the road to recovery.
Yeah, but you want to talk about a mess of a situation there. I mean, I guess if I had to take a guess on what's going to happen is they're probably going to go with Haskins next year for now, but I know Keenum was the starter originally at the beginning of the season, but he has not been inspiring at all. So, depending on how they feel going into the next season, I mean, they may even try to bring somebody like another veteran or something in. I mean, I don't even know what they're going to do. I mean, this is probably the worst situation out of all of them, because even though, like, you could argue maybe like the Dolphins or Bengals are worse, like they at least have a game plan that they're going to be drafting a quarterback. Whereas with Washington, it's like you just spent a first round pick on a guy. Like, are you going to do that again next year, or do you spend even more money on a veteran?
Pull in Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're in a horrible situation here.
I'm going to disagree with it a little bit. Haskins, it's still too early to tell, I think. So I think Haskins is definitely going to be a starter next year, 100%. But as far as I guess with the Alex Smith contract and the Case Keenum there and everything, like they don't have any good guys yet. But Haskins, it's way too early to tell on how he could end up being a great quarterback. We don't know. So I don't know about it being a terrible situation, but we just don't know. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's had like multiple.
There's no that team is so bad, dude. Like,
yeah.
I mean obviously, I know that's like not a good situation to be in, but I mean, I don't know, man. It's
way too early. He was like thrown into the lineup that one week. He didn't like halfway through a game. I think it's just way too early to tell on Haskins. This season,
yeah. I mean, I think you for Haskins sake, I'm in agreement with Zach. I think you need to throw this season out because, I mean, the Redskins just don't have anybody. I mean, when you're trying to run an offense where, you got an aging Adrian Peterson as your running back, and I mean, I don't even know who the Redskins have catching passes anymore. Like, because
that rookie's been okay for him.
Yeah, because
or something.
Yeah, because Jordan Reed got hurt again, and like yeah, so
yeah, he really does, man. Like,
please,
he's had like 14 concussions. It's like, bro, it's time. Like, you're gonna have CTE problems. Like,
yeah,
like you need to. He needs to, like, seriously, for his health. Like, he needs to hang up the cleats, man. It's time.
Yeah, so, I mean, listen, I think they just need to throw this season out, but, like, I do agree that Haskins is 100% going to be the starter next year. I mean, they're just going to have to – Washington needs to go out in the draft and in free agency and actually get some weapons for Dwayne Haskins to work with and, maybe an offensive line, too, because that hasn't been the greatest in the world either.
Yeah, that's true. And then the Dolphins and the Bengals, I think we can just kind of tackle at the same time. I mean, it's been obvious what both of them are doing. The Bengals are going to move on from Andy Dalton.
They've already benched him.
Yeah, I mean, they benched him. I mean, the Dolphins have been rotating Fitzpatrick and Rosen. Like, I think they were hopeful that maybe Rosen could be the guy, but obviously, I mean, it's a similar situation with Haskins where, like, he doesn't have anybody good around him, but Miami's been stocking up on all these draft picks for a reason. Like, they're going to draft somebody. Cincinnati's going to draft somebody. And I don't think anybody's in a disagreement on this.
No.
I will say Cincinnati has been tanking beautifully, though.
I know all the Dolphins fans were upset that their team couldn't even tank properly.
Well, they didn't fully tank right in the sense, though, what Miami has, of course, won a couple games, but Cincinnati made the mistake of not trading AJ Green and not trading Geno Atkins. I mean,
to the Ravens.
Yeah. In Madden franchise, I have the Ravens, and I stole Geno Atkins and AJ Green from the Bengals in trades, and they led me to a Super Bowl. But obviously, that's Madden; that's completely different. But the Bengals are going to need at least a 2 or 3 year rebuild, and obviously, AJ Green and Geno Atkins aren't probably going to want to, deal with that long of a rebuild. And by the time they're at the end of the rebuild, they're not going to be contributing factors anymore. Like, they could have probably gotten some draft capital for them, which they didn't. Whereas Miami was smart, and any even like slightly, tradable asset they had, they got rid of them, and Miami at least has a stockpile of draft picks. Like, they're not going to get the number 1 overall pick, but they're still going to be in a better situation than Cincinnati is, I think. But moving on though to Tampa Bay and Oakland. Wow, I guess they are Oakland for now. They'll be
Las Vegas
Las Vegas next year. But Tampa Bay is another obvious one, I think. I mean, Jameis Winston, he's had several years, like,
him and Mariota are similar.
Yeah, I mean, him and Mariota are the same class together. They both were huge disappointments overall throughout their tenure, but especially Winston. Mariota at least had a playoff appearance, but
he threw a touchdown pass to himself.
Yeah, he threw a touchdown pass to himself. But I mean, you got to be disappointed if you're a Jameis Winston fan or like a Florida State fan or a Tampa fan. I mean, it's not been the career that was envisioned when he got drafted number 1 overall. But if you're Tampa Bay, I don't know how you would not move on from him. Like, they need to get somebody else for sure.
The thing with Winston is he's actually a good quarterback. It's just he throws way too many interceptions, and some of them aren't his fault. The OJ Howard one was, if you probably saw it on Twitter, how it was on his back and stuff. But this game against Atlanta, he had a great game, but his very first throw was an interception. I mean, it's just too hard to win games when you throw 3+ interceptions almost every game. So they're going to have to move on from him, probably in the draft would be my guess.
Well, yeah, and that's the funny thing about Jameis Winston is that, like, he'll consistently throw for over 300 yards, but at the same time, he's throwing like 3 or 4 interceptions. So it's like, I mean, if you look at his season stats, I mean, it's 3,400 yards, 22 touchdowns to 20 interceptions, which is not good.
I mean, my guess would be, I don't know like all these exact numbers here, but my guess would be that like whoever has the second most interceptions is probably, not even close to that, like probably by at least 5 interceptions less than that would be my guess. I mean, that's a lot of interceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Oakland, a little bit trickier, but Derek Carr he had a horrendous game today. I mean, he got benched while playing against the Jets. I mean, that's bad. I mean, it was not a good day for him. And he's one of those quarterbacks too that has a huge contract. So I don't know exactly like how easily they can get out of the contract, but I am in agreement that he's in this list though, because if I'm Oakland, I'm finding a way to move on from next year. He has not been playing very well these last couple seasons, and I don't know, they're getting ready to move to a new city. Like, I think they need to get like a new quarterback to get them going for their move, and start with a new face as a new city, new face of the franchise. Like they need to move on from him. What do you guys think?
I'll go ahead first. It's crazy. Actually, Carr's having a quietly good season this year. Today was awful, but he's having a quietly good season. So I think under most circumstances, with most conservative teams.
Oh yeah, true. I did say bad. I guess I said bad. That was a bad.
I mean, it was a bad game today, but the season-wise, he's had quietly an okay season. But the thing is, with most conservative teams, you wouldn't move on from Carr. But it's the Raiders. It's John Gruden. Like, people thought they were going to draft a quarterback last year, and I think a lot of rumors were that Gruden did want to draft a quarterback. He wanted Haskins, I think, last year, Kyler Murray, but they were taking, or I guess it would have been Kyler. He wanted Kyler Murray, but he was obviously couldn't get him. So, yeah, Gruden's always looking to draft a quarterback. I think that's going to be the case, and I think Carr's going to get a shot somewhere else. So it's going to be interesting. But, yeah, under these circumstances, I don't think Carr will be starting next year, but I do think he's having a season good enough to where he could be starting somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, normal circumstances, Derek Carr remains, but we've seen what John Gruden does and what he's willing to do. And the Raiders, just as a whole, like Eric said with the move, I think they're just ready to move on from Derek Carr. I mean, he's not the answer. He had that one good year where everybody thought, oh, Derek Carr, like, he's going to be the answer. He's going to be the one to bring the championship back to the Oakland or back to the Raiders. Yeah, that's not happening. So we'll see how that goes and who, like, whether they go after, maybe they try to go after Cam Newton next season. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think the Raiders still have lots of cap room because most of their players came from draft picks. So,
and they have a good team. They're in the playoff hunt too. Like
right. So
they're the only team in the playoff hunt in this discussion, which makes it interesting.
Right. So, like, do they go after Cam Newton or somebody like that? I don't know if Andy Dalton would be the answer, but or do they try and draft? No. But yeah, Cam Newton's out on the market, and maybe could they draft for a quarterback at some point? Maybe get one of those sleeper quarterbacks. I mean, Lamar Jackson was the last pick in the first round, and he's looking like an MVP. So if the Raiders get one of those like mid to late first round picks, if they can find a hidden gem, or maybe one of those other quarterbacks from not like Burrow or Tua, but like maybe Jake Fromm or one of those other quarterbacks who maybe there's not a whole lot of hype around, but who knows what could happen. So,
yeah. All right, guys. Well, we hit all 32 teams in that discussion. Some obviously granted more talk than others, but if your team didn't get talked much about, it's probably a good thing. We'll be coming back with another episode in a couple days. I will actually be taking my first leave of absence on this next episode. I won't be here for the first time. So you're going to hear Connor and Eric and maybe Nate in the next episode, but I'm sure they're going to do a great job. They're going to do the topics episode. So I'm guessing they'll have 1 to 2 topics each. I'm excited to listen to it as like a Clutch Crew Sports fan, not being in an episode, not knowing at all what they're saying. Click on that YouTube video that they're going to say. So So that's what to look forward to. But thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. Thank you for all your support you've shown on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. Subscribing, we really appreciate you guys. You guys are part of the family of Clutch Roof Sports. So keep listening, keep liking our stuff, and we'll keep making it for you. All right, guys, take care.
Bye.
Peace.